This is the continuation of the CBC in Ottawa, and it'll be broken down into pieces like this because of such a big file. So let's have a listen.
We recognize that Radio-Canada is facing a different situation than CBC and should be treated separately from the CBC in this situation. I'm not saying that services in French don't need to play their part. I'm sure the mandate will be reviewed and we'll have to re-examine the funding model. But what we want to hear right now is, how will you reassure Quebecers on their television services, their regional services in French, and these services offered by Radio-Canada? Nothing is reassuring them. You're not saying that you understand the difference. You have 30 seconds. You're not recognizing the role of Radio-Canada. I think my colleague was halfway through her answer earlier. I just want to be clear.
Madame la Présidente, je calcule qu'il me restait encore une quinzaine.
Madam Chair, I still had about 15 seconds, I believe. Do we not have the right to respond?
It's over, but that's okay. State, will you answer? Most everybody went over, so I'll let you have a very quick answer, Ms. Ballou.
J'apprécie.
Merci beaucoup. Ce que je veux vous...
What I want to say is that Radio-Canada needs to serve all francophones in the country, and it also needs to support a media ecosystem that is fragile, especially in the regions. And so there needs to be productions from Winnipeg and from Moncton, and they need to be supported at Radio-Canada. We have the same structural deficit, and it needs to be balanced, but we made the decision to not have as many cuts.
Voilà.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Peter Julian. Peter, 2.5 minutes, please.
Mais je pense le message que...
I think that you've heard from at least 3 parties here the importance of focusing on maintaining this network throughout the country. It's essential. I hope that you'll remember after this the importance of investing in a way that will be best for Canadians. But there is a political party asking for the end of CBC, but they're also saying that Radio-Canada can survive without CBC. I believe the opposite. For example, in Vancouver, CBC and Radio-Canada are sharing a space. Journalists often come to our press conferences. They come for both networks. And so the Francophone community in Vancouver can have that information, but the sharing of resources is essential. And so my question is as follows. Is it legitimate to claim that we could eliminate the funding for CBC and Radio-Canada will still be able to thrive after the destruction of CBC? Answer. It's impossible to imagine, and that's why I gave that speech in Montreal. There is no Radio-Canada without CBC because we share our infrastructure, our buildings, our technology, the equipment, and for the administration, funding, everything is shared. We are one single entity except for programming and for the news and for decisions on TV. Those things are separate. but the infrastructure is shared. And so the answer is that if we remove CBC, there will be even more significant cuts at Radio-Canada. And so it is false to claim that, as the Conservatives have claimed. Thank you.
Short sentence. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to Ms. Thomas for 5 minutes, please.
Ms. Tate, I just looked online, and as CEO, it is your responsibility to determine who you would recommend for bonuses and how much. You recommend that to the board, and then the board can veto you, of course, if they wish to. Now, of course, if they were to do that, it would signal that they don't have confidence in your leadership. So I think, given the fact that they've extended your contract by 18 months, they probably would take your recommendation. So I'm just curious, it's coming up in 2 months. Will you be recommending that executive bonuses are given?
I will respond to that question as I have earlier, which is to say, if we achieve the results of the current fiscal year, I will recommend that the 1,140 unaffiliated, non-unionized employees receive their fair pay, their performance pay.
Their fair pay, their bonus pay. So you will be recommending then in 2 months' time that the executives receive a bonus?
If they achieve their targets.
Okay, so you already said earlier that targets were not met in previous years, and I also looked that up online, and that is in fact true. In fact, not only there were a number of targets that weren't met, and then the vast majority of targets were only partially met, and yet still bonuses were given. So how many targets have to be met in order for bonuses to be given this year? Fully met.
So we have a system where targets can be partially met, not met, or overachieved.
Yeah.
And we go through that system. We present this to the board. The board approves at the end of the year the performance of the organization. And
How many have to be completely met in order for the bonus to be given?
well, I would suspect that some of it have to be completely met to have.
Some of it have to be completely met. So, Ms. Tate, you're the one that gives the recommendation. So, I'd like you to answer: will your recommendation be met on Will your recommendation be given based on some being met, 4 being met, 6 being met, 8 being met, all?
You know, the Liberals and the NDP are just getting to a point where the cover-up is so obvious what they're doing, and they're really good at talking on the fly about covering BS. It's actually quite incredible, but incredibly sad that it's come to this point in Canada. Let's look at the next part of these videos, and it's just really sad to see that CBC coming, and they just need to stop funding, in my opinion, altogether. Let's watch the next video.
Being met.
You understand the way it works. Let's say there are 7 performance indicators. Each one is awarded a percentage of the performance pay. So revenue, for example, is 20%. Revenue is a huge driver for the company. And so if we don't achieve revenue, we will not achieve the 20%. But that's not to say it goes to 0.
Okay.
That's what Marco is saying,
So
that there will be a lesser amount awarded. And to your question, I very much suspect that this year we will not meet our revenue target entirely, given my comments about the Quebec market.
So, Ms. Tate, what you're telling the committee then is that the decision has been made to cut 800 jobs. That announcement came out on December 4th, right before Christmas, which is a pretty harsh time of year to make that announcement. And what you have just told this committee is that there is still an intent to give bonus pay, whether all KPIs have been met or not.
First of all, the announcement in December was an estimate forecast should our financial situation not improve, and the majority of the cuts, and it's very clearly stated in the release, if the majority of the cuts will occur in the next fiscal year. We were giving a long runway in order to be able to improve. In fact, we are very focused as a management team on improving the results and reducing the cuts to the extent we can. The longer we have to work on a problem, the greater chance we have of achieving the result.
Ms. Tate, here's a few facts. Under your leadership, trust in the media, and especially in the CBC, has declined. Fewer Canadians are watching the CBC, and in fact, viewership has been cut in half since you took over in 2018. Ad revenue has plummeted. It's decreased by 31% from 2022 to 23. And the number of CBC staff earning a 6-digit salary has doubled. And then to add to that, in the last 2 years, just the last 2 years under your leadership, more than 100 correction notices have had to be issued with regards to stories put out by the CBC. In your estimation, have you met the KPIs and therefore deserve a bonus this year?